Yes, I want to remake one of my most successful animations. It's this one, by the way. I'm gonna show you the full version later. I planned to remake it a couple of times, but never did. And now it's time. I want to show you the whole thing, but at the moment I can't, because it's made to fit a certain song. And you know, we're on YouTube, copyright. The song is by Disney. And I can't even put a replacement song, because it's literally cut to fit the song. And I got a couple of ideas which I all threw out of the window. So now I decided to make an actual cover. Problem is, I don't know a thing about producing music, but I'm just gonna give it a try. The song I used for it is called Arabian Nights, and I cannot show you the video with audio because copyright, but I'm gonna try to record a cover. I have no idea how to produce music, and I'm also doing it in my video editing program, but it's better than nothing. And I picked the part where you can hear the dark voice whispering. I'm gonna try to recreate that first. I'm going to try. Please don't judge me.
Only one may Only one may enter here.
It sounds cursed, but luckily we got an effect called Monster. It sounds like this. And now I want a bit of reverb. Great. Then adding to the voice, I just added a really simple build-up. That was interesting. Okay, let me add a bit of melody with my violin. Was not perfect, but it's alright. We also have it an octave lower. And then we have this ridiculously high part. Then we have a little in between. You can hear string plucking. Well, a violin doesn't go as deep as required, so I just pitched it down an octave. Great. Alright, the strings part is decent. And now there's also a percussion part, which is pretty important. And no, I don't have drums, but I have pressed wood. And I also obviously don't have a snare drum, so instead I have a piece of cardboard that I can slide around. You know what? Let's just try it out. It actually does sound like a snare drum. Well, it sounds more like I'm beatboxing, but still. Let me try a darker sound. Oh god. How is that? Yeah, well, the self-made drums didn't really work out. It just sounds like footsteps or something like that. So, I added a couple of sound effects. I just searched up drum hit. It sounds like this. And now we have like... The only thing that was like barely any good was the big canvas. Kind of modified it to sound like this. Then I have some kind of transition effect, which sounds like this. I sampled these sound effects all over the project. To the percussion, I added something called Alien, Cathedral 2, and Bass Enhancer. That makes the whole thing go from this to this. Well, now, the song has lyrics and I can't sing. Yes, I do hit the notes, but my voice is just not trained at all. Now, I think the key signature is a bit too low for me, but I'm just gonna try. It is too low for me. I had to pitch it up. So we go from this to this. It makes the strings a bit more squeaky, but whatever. Let's try again. Now, since I'm not a professional singer and not a singer at all, I just took multiple recordings of my voice and took the best parts out of each one. But it sounded kind of plain, so I decided to harmonize with myself, and I don't know a lot of harmonizing either, but I just tried out whatever sounded right. Together it sounds like this. Then I added a harmony again, and I pitched it down an octave. It sounds pretty uncanny on its own. I added reverb and a voiceover enhancement. I don't know exactly what it does, but it sounds good. As you can see, it's getting dark outside. It took me the whole day. I expected it to take like 2 hours, but I can actually show you the video now with the finished song. Your destiny lies in your head. Arabian nights, Arabian days, they seem to excite, take off and take flight, to shock and amaze. Arabian nights, with Arabian moons, a fool off his guard could fall and fall hard out there on As I said, it sounds alright, but it's obvious that the production quality is bad. But it doesn't matter. It does the job. And now that this doesn't entirely end up in chaos, well, it will anyway, but not complete chaos, I'm gonna go through it frame by frame and take notes. It starts with a couple of really short frames and it's matched to the words. So we have your destiny lies in your hands. And I actually really like this part. There's not a lot to change, but those hands. I was trying to make a random movement, but it looks like the camera goes like it isn't supposed to look like that. So the hands should be more in frame. The camera movement should be a bit more natural. And I also want the hands to move independently from each other because they're moving like this. Then he's looking up at his parents, and what is that transition? I need him to actually look up. We have Kaya's parents looking at him. We see him kneeling in front of them, looking at his hands. And I love this composition. Now, his parents are not animated, and this time I want to animate them. I want more fire. Obviously, I want him to be animated too. I want him to look more shocked, breathe more heavily, and maybe his clothes should be more dirty or damaged because, well, look at his surroundings. Next, we have a close-up of Kaya's face, and here I want more animation as well, but for this one, I also want eye movement. He's like looking from one parent to another. Next, we have the transition. I think I'm gonna keep that kind of light effect, but I want to add some flowing texture to the eye itself. Then we zoom out, and he's just walking. I love that one. I'm just gonna redraw it, obviously. Next up, we have really stiff looking walking. The reason why I moved the camera up the leg is because it looked so bad on its own. I have to improve everything about that. Then he's lifting up his sword. I want to give it a reflection. The next scene is also done pretty good. I don't even know if I want to change anything about it. Maybe add a bit more fire to the surroundings. Here I just didn't have an idea anymore what to put there. Maybe I want to change it up to something completely different. Then we have the part that matches the music perfectly. Maybe I can animate the magic better. Then we briefly see the magic that just evolved and the back of a woman's head. I just randomly put some streaks on there to make it look like magic. So I want to change that. And also the hair. I just put an animation on the whole thing. And it looks really bad. We have the goddess face and Kaya's face. And I love that one as well. And obviously I want to improve this because the face is a tiny bit messed up. And I want to add way more wind. Like, for the next one, she's like making a cube appear in her hand. I want the cube to already be, or to already appear in her hand when she's doing this. And then when she does this, she's shooting it at him. And as you can see, this is screaming, I just want to get finished. Bend your damn arm, God. I'm either gonna make him go like this or like this. But bend your arm. Why is this man not bending any of his limbs? Then at the end, he vanishes. Don't ask me if this has a deeper meaning, because it doesn't. As you can see, I just needed a final looking conclusion. If I don't get another idea, I'm gonna do that again. But this time, make the magic look better, and that's it. I recorded a little preview using myself to envision how I want the finished result to look. And unfortunately, I'm gonna show you because it looks horrible. That's basically how I imagine it. I started doing that for longer cosplay videos and actually it really helped. So now that we have the base idea and the base plan, I actually need to start drawing. I will do anything in my power to avoid fully drawing backgrounds. So first of all, I made a floor. I simply took cardboard and started pressing my pencil into there because I recently came across someone doing D&D minis and they did exactly that to create cobblestone floor. So that idea is not originally by me and I'm lucky because my biggest strength is painting. I painted it gray, added black paint to the gaps and a bit of white paint to the edges on top. I think it turned out pretty good and now I have a 3D floor. I constructed some cardboard arches and what I want to do with that is take pictures of the elements and then basically edit them together. Now in the destroyed city you can see those cubes floating in the sky and I didn't want to draw them again, so I folded up some black paper, painted the edges white so I could make them red, and here we have it, a 3D cube. I can film this from every angle and implement it. Wonderful. And now it's time to start drawing and that will probably take a lot of time. So now we're gonna cut over to me being in the middle of the whole process. Yeah, it's a lot of drawing. It's already been almost a week and I'm done with the intro. It already is quite a lot, but the actual length of the video is this. This might take longer than I initially thought, but let's get into it for now. The first clip is a sword. I just kind of changed the perspective and put an overlay on top so it gets brighter. We have the background, the sword, some lighting for the background and some lighting for the sword. And I just turned the opacity of the lighting layers up a bit. This one is a lot more complicated because compared to the old one, his hair is actually moving. And those cubes in the background also have a story. Like I already said, I made one from paper. The original video footage looks like this, which is not ideal for blue screen because this shadow that you can see here is not ideal to filter out. But I tried my best. The shadows are still noticeable, especially here. But it still looks way better than the first one. And now we have actual 3D spinning objects, which gives it a lot more life. Next clip is an earring. I didn't want to draw an earring anymore, but just the rough crystal that is in his earring. With a tiny bit of color editing and transforming, it looks like this. Then the flower. This is actually one of my favorite clips from the original one because I love the way how it's falling. So to improve it further, I used a reference this time. I actually traced the reference because I got lazy. And I needed to draw every single petal by itself. Because I animated the whole thing, which you can barely see, but every single petal moves separately. And the sparks are just an overlay of a video containing sparks. Then I noticed that when liquid is falling down, it doesn't have a drop form. It actually falls in a round form. So here I have a moving blob, which is falling down in front of a fast moving background with motion blur on top. And the same drop is falling down into the puddle. And I made the background spin a bit because the original one doesn't do anything. The hands. Last time I really had issues to fit them into the frame and they move like this, which is just badly animated. I improved the drawing of the hands. I traced them as well because they're hands. I hope you get me. I traced my own hands, okay? I actually have a layer for each separate finger and I also animated each separate finger so that if you want to animate one finger, the others don't get squished because that happens if you only have one layer. And now they come into the frame like this. I could have made them tinier to fit beside each other, but I really wanted them to fill the frame, so we have this and I like it. Then they quickly move downward and we cut to his parents. Last time I did a really bad transition, which I don't like. So this time I just made long versions of the floor and then moved them upwards in the animation and just put motion blur on top. And also the cubes in the background are now done properly because this time I just painted a wooden stick blue, used enough light sources and held the whole thing up from the ground so it wouldn't throw a shadow. And that's it so far. Alright, next up is this frame, which was really badly drawn in my opinion because I kind of just traced the folds of the reference and then shaded over it with a red airbrush and this time I definitely shaded it better. And he's also not looking up anymore because his parents are obviously not right in front of him. So now he actually does look confused and worried and not like he's praising some sort of deity up in outer space or something. And what I'm gonna do now is open Live 2D because that's what I use for animating at the moment. And I'm using the free version. Let me make a new model and then drag this onto here. It needs to be a PSD. Here it is. And this whole thing, we don't need all that. So I'm just gonna delete it. Let me name my layers so I don't get confused. The parts that are not going to move anyway are the background, the shadow, and his eyeball, which just exists as a background for his eye. But then the eye is going to move. Okay, the preview resolution is not that high, so it's a bit pixelated. I'm just gonna give a really quick tutorial in case you don't know how to use Live 2D. If you actually want to learn it though, watch other tutorials and not me. Let's make a new parameter. Call it eye. And then add keyframes. When we go to this keyframe, it's going to look to the left. When we go to this keyframe, I want the eye to look to the right. So far so good. The base doesn't need to move, which is this. And then on top we have the color. I want this one to move. Now, I can not just drag it around like the eye, because instead I'm gonna make a mesh, a heavy mesh, and then put some deformers on top. Let's put one here, one here, one here, and one here. So now if I click on them and drag them, this happens. The more dense the mesh is, the less chunky it gets. For this one we also add a parameter and add keyframes. First keyframe, second keyframe, and now we have this. Really simple. I'm not gonna move these up here because they're obviously attached to his outfit. Ponytail. We're gonna do the exact same thing. Make a mesh, put deformers on top, add a parameter, and move it. It now has this kind of movement. I actually don't want it to flow like this, but rather like this. but I haven't figured out how to do it yet. Wait a minute, change of plans. I'm gonna put a rotation deformer on top. Ponytail rotation. So now we have this movement and this movement. I'm gonna show you how to animate it later. I got a little hair strand up here. I want it to fall down into his face, kind of like this. I usually have a lot of layers for hair, but for this one I just have one. Because for this frame it would have been too much detail. Those tiny movements should be fine. Now we get to an essential part, which is the arms. I wanted to move up and I wanted to move down. As you can see, the thumb is getting pulled. I'm gonna fix that. All right. Great. Next arm. This one has 3 deformers. And now this is all we need. But wait, I also need him to breathe. He's a human being, at least I think so. And human beings breathe most of the time. What I'm gonna do is apply a mesh to the base. On top of that, apply a warp deformer. And what that does is I can deform him. So what we need to do now is put all the other parts that belong to his body under this curved surface as well. And now the entire thing should move. Well, at least all the things that have a mesh. But that's no problem, because I can just simply apply a mesh to both the eyeball and the eye. So now we can move the entire thing. Okay. And so, clicking on curved surface, we add another parameter, and let's call it breathing. So now I can just slightly pull his shoulders up, so it kind of does look like breathing. Then let's save that and create a new animation. So now we just pull Kaya Young onto this canvas. I don't want the background to be seen, because I'm gonna animate that one separately. Now we open the parameters, and if we pull them around, things are moving. So now we can add a couple of keyframes, and we do that by adding values. Put a keyframe here, which has the value 0, and then this one has the value -15. And basically that means that the eye is moving. And let's just make him nervously move around his eyes. And now we have something like this. Before I do the others, let me show you what I want to do with the ponytail. I'm gonna start with the value -20, then move to 20. If I do that a couple more times, it should look like this, and it does look too stiff. So this is going to move left and right as well, but it's not gonna move with the rotation, but slightly after it. We have one movement and the other movement, and they're not moving like this, but like this. This one's not perfect, but it does look more bouncy. And now, let me make the rest. Here's the finished animation. He's breathing pretty quickly, but that's intentional. I think it shows a bit more emotion than the first one. I got a PSD of the background here, and let's drag it into the timeline. And I can just simply double click on it, and we have all the contents of this file. We can move all the elements separately, which is exactly what I'm gonna do. The elements that are in front are gonna move faster than the elements in the back. We have our first movement. Wonderful. Don't worry, that's not all of it. Okay, now all elements are moving. Here we have a little heat effect for fire in the background. Ironic enough, the underwater effect makes it look even better. And now something is clearly missing. Here we go. And of course, what's missing is Kaya himself. He's right in the front and he's way too big. Now, something is still missing, which is his parents. You can see a tiny bit of their silhouettes in the original one. So let's add his parents and make them big. Let's turn down the exposure and add blur. Add some sparks as well, and then just simply zoom in. Ta-da! And that's how I make a clip. Oh, this is taking forever. Okay, it's Monday again, and I already spent 2 weeks working on this. And today I did the main frame, like where we get the first appearance of his older self. And I forgot how insanely, ridiculously detailed Genshin outfits are. But I was reminded of it. And the whole thing without background took me a bit over 5 hours, which is actually pretty quick. You know what's important in this process is that you should not get stuck on minor details, because most of the frames are shown for like not even 2 seconds. Okay, so in this frame he's walking. He's walking towards the camera, and to make him actually look like he's walking, I made every element bounce. You can see it here. And as you can see, it still looks pretty unnatural. That's because all of the elements are moving at the same time. But that's what we actually don't want. If we take his earring, for example, here it moves with every element, and if we drag the keyframes a bit behind, it looks like this. comparison. You can barely see it, but if you do that with a lot of elements, this is the result. And you can definitely see that this looks more natural than this. And the dots down here are going crazy. Perfection doesn't look as tasty to the eye. I just made that up. Then I just made the entire character move up and down, and now he actually does look like he's just bouncing because we don't have a background. I quickly made some pillars. I have 3 sets of them that move separately, and my silver spray paint is getting everywhere and I just had it in my mouth. Where was I? Yeah, and though they move at the same time, they don't move at the same speed. Because if they move at the same speed, they just look like one unit. So the thing that's right at the front moves way faster than the thing that's way in the back. I mean, if you've looked out of a car window, you notice that the trees right in front of you are moving pretty quickly. The trees that are way back in the distance move very slowly. And it's the same if something's moving towards you. So now we just need to place him here, add some color grading and fancy effects. Also a fancy transition. I had to experiment a bit with that one. In the original one, I made all my transitions in CapCut. CapCut's kind of a pain to work with sometimes, so I wanted to make everything in Final Cut Pro. Yeah, that's why I don't have this transition available anymore. And next up is the part with the legs. I got comments saying that the legs look as stiff as boards, and that's definitely true, because they're not bending at all. Also, you might be able to see it, but I got lazy at that point and just cut out his legs from in-game. But now I'm gonna paint them myself because it looks weird. But first I'm going to sleep because this whole thing took me the whole day. I did the original version in a week and it's already been 2. But I'm getting this finished no matter what. Okay, this time I did actually draw the legs myself. But of course I wanted to get them accurate. So I used this actual 3D model and I have it from a website and it's called Games Fashion Archive. There you can find 3D models from a bunch of games, including Genshin. And what I love about this is that you can take the outfits apart and look at separate pieces, zoom in, rotate it. It's a blessing for anyone who's trying to recreate the outfits. Yeah, so here we have the legs, and this time they consist out of 3 pieces each, so the knee can bend and the foot can bend and the toes as well. Now if I just rotate it, it will look chopped off, and of course we don't want that. But in Live 2D there's this thing called glue. You basically select 2 layers and select the overlapping points they have, and then you glue them together. And yeah, it's not that flawless, so I had to adjust it a bit. I made an additional adjustment parameter to each bending knee. So now if you bend the knee and apply the adjustments, it looks flawless and I love it. If you add multiple rotation points, just remember to under-categorize them, because if they exist separately, it looks like this. Okay, now the leg has a lot more movement, but at the same time that means that it's harder to animate it with the floor. This was my first try, this was my second try, and this was my third try. I was slowly sinking into despair. So I simply panned the frame up and down, kind of like in the original one. And you know what, I like it. Camera movement adds life and it's fine. At least the knees are bending. And that little accessory down on his boot is also moving. I'm proud of that. Then he's moving his sword upwards. I didn't really want to change that, and I had the finished outcome in no time, and I forgot the gloves. So I just added them, and it wasn't a lot of work, but now this is the finished thing. The first frame looks about the same. The background's maybe a bit more dynamic because it looks like something's burning. But now the second one doesn't look as linear as the original one, because the original one is just like, and the new one is like, and I don't know if you noticed, but I added a little highlight on the sword that appears when he's moving it. Now that was pretty relaxing, and now I have to draw a full body. Let's go. What am I even doing to myself? It's been another 8 hours of drawing and animating and editing. Give me a minute. I'm now at the point that finishing this animation actually sounds realistic. Today I did the background for this frame, but now it looks like this. I kind of like the charm of the original one, but I kind of wanted to go a bit bigger. Here we have Kaya's full body, fully animated. You can't really zoom in onto that because the resolution is not that high. Even back then I didn't like how I did the magic. So this time I just rendered 2 ice crystals. Then I put a bunch of them on top of each other and created this. Now they kind of pop out of of the middle. I don't even remember all the things that I used to edit this, but it looks like this. And on top I put Nebula, which is a background that you can get in Final Cut Pro. I also added this glowing orb thing, and now it looks like this. Can't believe that I'm finally at this stage. Like I said, I wanted to replace the earring because it looks out of place, and I did. I simply just took the sword and I basically just froze it like this. And I also added some blue veins with an underlayer of some animated something, but you can't really see it. Adding the ice was pretty simple because I just created some ice on top and then let the whole thing appear on the sword with a mask. And of course that would be too plain, so I added a bit of camera work. I really like how the earring looks too, but again it's kind of out of place. Now we come to these beams of magic. I actually kept them. I actually like them so much that I don't need to improve anything. Well, maybe apart from adjusting the colors a bit, saves me a bit of work, tiny amount. Then we have this scene with the back of the head of the goddess. And yeah, the hair was really badly animated. So again, I went a bit overboard and animated a whole head of hair. Whole hair of head. No, a whole head of hair. I kind of decreased the zoom a bit, added a blur effect on top, and now we have this. Now we come to a part that I've been waiting for some time, because I can finally draw the unknown goddess, because that's one of the worst frames in the original animation. I mean, it's alright, but look at her chin. I don't know what happened there. I haven't drawn her yet, so epic transition. I'm probably gonna forget the transition anyway. On to another 8 hours of animating and drawing. Alright, it's Monday, but I finished it on Saturday. Just so you know, of all the frames, this is the biggest glow up so far, because I went from this to this, and it's like, it's hard to see your own improvement, but I can't see it here. I did indeed do a motion transition, but it's not zooming out, it's zooming in. I have to admit, I kind of like the original one more. It's fine. Also, zooming out would have been a bit more tricky because I haven't quite figured that out yet. But I'm gonna admit the zoom is pretty smooth. It's a bit more complicated than in CapCut because a transition of this type doesn't exist in the basic library of Final Cut Pro. So I just added a zoom effect to the end of one clip and to the beginning of the other clip, added motion blur, and on the bottom there's tiling, and then I zoomed it in as well, and the whole thing just looks like this. Just a simple zoom effect. And then on top I added motion blur. Motion blur is the key for smooth, fast moving things. I've also decreased the amount of cubes, makes it look a bit less flat, and the cubes are see-through now. I added some kind of blending mode, I don't remember which one. Then we have a close-up of Kaya, and this is a frame that I actually did like 3 weeks ago. And when it cuts over from the god to Kaya, there's not really much happening because I wanted the moment to be a bit more intense and less impactful. If you get what I mean, like they're staring each other before ripping each other apart, I guess. On the next 4 beats, in the original, I have a side view of the god, then she's creating a cube, then there's Kaya, and he's thrusting down his sword. But this time I wanted to leave it a bit more open. I just added the god from a side view, but she didn't have the cube yet, because it doesn't make sense if she's just spawning it at her hand. I want her to create it and then throw it. So we have the god, then she's creating a cube. In the next frame, the cube is flying, and on the 4th beat, the cube is coming closer and we have a transition to Kaya. Well, this is the old one. The new one is a bit different because we have more going on. We have the pillars in the background, we have an animated Kaya, and we have a 3D crown. But the effort didn't really pay out because you cannot see the animation of the crown. Because the actual file looks like this, and you can tilt it to make it look 3D, and you can tilt it back. Then on top of all that, I slapped a bit of color grading, some effects, and now it looks like this. It's also a glow up from the original one. And now here's the final animation. Your destiny lies in your head. Arabian nights, Arabian days, they seem to excite, take off and take flight, to shock and amaze. Arabian nights, with Arabian moons, a fool of his guard could fall and fall hard out there on their dunes. What are my thoughts? How do I feel? Well, I started this on Monday 4 weeks ago. It was such an amount of work, but I did it and I'm very glad that I did it. I'm gonna admit though, when I finished editing the very last frame, I just leaned back, looked at it and was like, seems like I'm finished, because I've been staring at it for over 3 weeks and it's just not interesting to my eyes anymore. And that's fine. I'm very proud of it and I have no idea what size of audience I'm exposing myself to right now, because I gained like over 30,000 subscribers. The support has been overwhelming. Thank you so much. And I haven't updated anyone on what I'm doing. I've been like basically silent for a month. But here I am. This was the project I was working on. I wanted it to be a big surprise, especially for the people that know me because of that animation. And it will be posted on my animation channel. So just don't be surprised that the animation isn't posted on this channel. Alright then. Here you can find my animation channel. My next project will not be that long, so we'll see each other soon. And until then, have a nice day, evening or night. And bye.